why don't I just go ahead and kick it off and start off. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. My name is Philip Stinnis. I'm the manager of Cal State Fullerton Startup Incubator. What it is that we do is we help people from the idea phase all the way through to the funding phase. And so we spend a lot of our times really understanding who the customer is, doing a lot of primary research, going into surveys, actually going into and talking with people, then developing an MVP, from the MVP, building a team, and then creating the business plan and also the investor pitch deck so that you can raise more money. And so those are all things that we offer in our incubator. We usually work with people for about 6 months. It takes quite a bit of time, but if you're fast and you are willing to put in the time and energy, then you can get through it a lot faster. But it does take some time to build a business. So I want to be truthful and honest. It's not an overnight success, no matter what you believe or what you might have seen on TV. So anyway, with that, I will put more information about our incubator in the chat as we're going along. And with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Mark Mears. Mark Mears, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Philip, and thank you for your team who put this on and invited me to speak to your group this evening. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to share my screen and see how we do. Okay. All right, let me put this on. Okay, here we go. All right. Well, as you mentioned, I'm Mark Mears. Don't forget the A, because if you want to go to my website or get me on LinkedIn, the A is what I had to do to get the username. So I'm not doing it to be pretentious, but I'm the Chief Growth Officer for Leaf Growth Ventures. We're going to talk a little bit more about my background. But as you can see, I wrote a book called The Purposeful Growth Revolution, 4 Ways to Grow from Leader to Legacy Builder. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, and why I call this Seeds for Growth is there is no way in 45 minutes I'm going to be able to cover everything I would love to be able to cover. So I'm just going to hopefully plant some seeds for growth in you that hopefully will germinate, and you'll have a deeper understanding, and maybe even want to go to my website and take a free Purposeful Growth self-assessment, which you can download immediately when you're done. It takes about 6 or 7 minutes to kind of find out where you are in alignment with purposeful growth. And we'll have a chance to hopefully connect. So I love the name of the startup incubator, and kind of doing a little bit of research on that, I found that it's a shared environment for explosive growth. And they think about the different ways of getting there: research, experimentation, learning, and optimization. That's pretty much the recipe for success in any organization, whether you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur with the idea of growing, or whether you're part of a bigger, broader company. This is what we must do to innovate and keep ourselves fresh, or I say green and growing. And to me, and I know you all would agree, hopefully, growth matters, right? If we don't grow, we die. And if we don't grow, our dreams may die. And so growth matters a lot, but I will aver that purposeful growth matters even more. So tonight we're going to talk a lot about the importance of purposeful growth, not just growth for the sake of growth, but purposeful growth where you're aiming for a noble purpose beyond just making money. If some of you are on here and you want to learn about just making money, you might as well tune out now, because I'm going to talk to you about how you can be purposeful in both your life and your work or vocation, to where you can grow up into your purpose and not only help those that you serve in your immediate circle, but even make your communities better, and dare I say, even the world better. The Beatles said it best a long time ago, and I love me some Beatles. Whenever I can slip them in a PowerPoint presentation, I try to. You say you want a revolution, well, we all want to change the world, and I believe we can. And so this isn't just hyperbole. We're going to talk about how we can grow up into our purpose, and in doing so, help others along their growth journey. So I looked into the definition of revolution to make sure that it wasn't just hyperbole. We've all heard probably the first definition, and there are three. The first is an uprising of the people, probably one we're very familiar with, whether it's American Revolution, French Revolution, Arab Spring, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, whatever. Usually an uprising comes up from people. And so if we think about it in a work context, people want to go from working at just a job to fulfilling a purpose. And not because I say that, but because the MIT Sloan School of Management did a survey of over 35 or 34 million people who left the workforce during COVID. And the number one reason cited was toxic work environment. Who here can resonate with that? Maybe that's why several of you are where you are and looking to be an entrepreneur and going out on your own. I'm just guessing. Now, toxic work environment came in over 10 times higher than reason number two. And compensation didn't come up until number 16 on the list. It's as if people were saying, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And COVID gave us all a bit of a timeout to reflect deeply on not only what, but who matters most in our lives. And we kind of put a line in the sand and said, here's what I'm willing to accept, and here's what I'm not willing to accept. Life's too short. So there's metrics behind this whole idea of purposeful growth, and I'm just going to give you a couple pages, so I don't want to bore you to death. But there is a case to be made for purposeful growth. And individuals that do have a connection with their purpose experience 63% increase in wealth, leadership, effectiveness, and fulfillment. You're going to hear more about that word fulfillment in a bit. They learn twice as much. They're 4 times more engaged. And get this, they're 175% more productive. That's almost 2 people worth, right? And companies with a connection to their purpose experience higher margins, because we've seen that purposeful firms are 30% more innovative, and 73% of customers will switch to higher purpose brands, and oftentimes pay more for them because they support whatever cause or purpose they ascribe to. And they provide higher levels of retention and tenure. What's the number one thing going on right now? And certainly the number one line item on a P&L is labor, right? Getting people in a tight job economy to not only come work for you, but retaining the talent you have. And oh, by the way, getting them engaged to where they give a damn in between, right? And then we also know that 54% report more fulfilling work relationships, which Gallup has, and I'll be talking about Gallup here a little bit more in a minute, has said for years is a barometer of engagement in the workplace, is having a best friend at work. So the second definition is a radical change in the status quo. And this takes us from incremental to transformational growth, or what I call step function change growth. When you think about it throughout history, there have been major kind of catalytic events that have created new growth opportunities, whether it be from a war or disease or famine, or maybe on a positive note, discovery, invention, or innovation, right? So you think about just the computer. I love this old picture of that computer from 1975. And then today, and then you think of some of the pioneers of that industry and where we are today with our smartphones representing more power in our hands than the NASA astronauts at Mission Control had when they put a man on the moon and got him back safely. Wow. And so now here we are with augmented reality, virtual reality, machine learning, everything we've heard in the news recently is about ChatGPT and this whole idea. We've had, from Alexa to Siri to you name it, where we've been moving towards this more integrated network. And so it's moving at a pace that's faster than we can keep up with it, right? Well, COVID, as I mentioned, radically changed the status quo. We went from working in an office environment to connecting remotely. And we were all forced to stay, inside, couldn't go to the office. We had to wear masks. We were isolated, with our families. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's not such a good thing, especially if you had to teach them at home. If you remember those days, not a lot of fun. Well, we all remember the official word of 2020 was pivot, right? I hate that word, but that was what we heard. Everyone had to pivot, do something new and different, or they would lose their business and possibly their livelihood. And then the official meme of 2020 was, dude, you're on mute. And then finally, the official question was, can I share my screen? So we all had to react differently, connect differently. And I don't think the genie's going back in the bottle. Hybrid workplaces are likely here to stay, and not because I say so, but Nicholas Bloom, who's a Stanford professor, did a study and found that 50% of the employee base will return to work in the office, 10% will continue to work remotely, and 40% will have some sort of hybrid schedule. How many of you have heard about the experiment that was done in the UK with the 4-day work week? Apparently, the results were really positive. They did not see a drop in productivity. They did not see a drop in profitability. And all but 2 of the companies who signed up for this experiment are planning on continuing it. You heard it here first, folks. I believe we're moving toward a 4-day work week, maybe here in the US at some point in the future. We'll see. But what we do know is that we have to now figure out a way to integrate high-tech solutions, like here we are on Zoom. I'm in beautiful Kansas City, and you are either in somewhere in California, or who knows, you may be anywhere in the country or the world. And so isn't it cool that we can get together through the magic of technology and share some information, some insights, and hopefully leave you with some seeds for growth when we're done. But we can't lose the high touch. And I think that's really going to be the important dynamic that can't go away until the robots or zombies, whatever's first, comes and takes us away. We're all humans, and we need to be in community with one another. We're going to talk a little bit more about community in a minute. Finally, the last definition of revolution is a circular orbit around an object. And this is a lot of what we know about the planets and whatnot, but we're moving us now from kind of this myth of work-life balance to more purposeful growth. I want to feel like I'm living in my purpose while I'm at work. I sleep a third of my adult life. I probably work a third, and I'm alive and doing other things for a third. Shouldn't we at least connect to 2 of them to feel like 2/3 of our life we're living and growing up into our purpose? And I believe we can. Now, where does purpose come from? How many of you heard of Simon Sinek and his whole Start With Why movement? It started as a TED Talk years ago. It's now gotten almost 62 million views. And his thesis was very simple. People want to know kind of why you do what you do before they even care how you do it or even what you do. And I thought that was brilliant. And I probably believe 62 million other people think so too. But I got to thinking a little deeper and not just accepting things as status quo. I said, no, you shouldn't start with why. Actually, we should start with who. And who you serve, and there's an important emphasis on serve, is even more important than your why. Matter of fact, it will lead you to your why. If you take and put in your mind a mental image of who you serve, could be 4 different categories of service, could be spiritual, could be relational, could be personal, could be professional, right? But they're all intertwined and revolving around purposeful growth. We're whole people. We're not just workers. We're not just employees. We're not just, God forbid, FTEs, full-time equivalents, or employee ID numbers. We bring our whole self into our work, and we should be allowed to, because only then will we be able to give of our full self. So we're going to talk more about professional, because that's why you all came on this Zoom tonight. And where have I planted my seeds throughout my career? Well, I've had the good fortune to serve on both the agency side and the brand side. I went to University of Kansas undergrad and went to the Northwestern for my master's, and started on the agency side at what was then Bozell, and it's changed names since then, and then moved over to Pizza Hut when it was owned by PepsiCo, And then my career kind of went on from there. These are the brands that I've been fortunate enough to serve. And I've also had some, pinch me moments by most of those cases serving as spokesperson and being interviewed on some pretty high profile media outlets, as you can see here. And yes, while I've had some pinch me moments, I've also had some pretty slug in the gut moments myself. So what am I doing today? Well, I formed Leaf Growth Ventures, and it's a consultancy all wrapped around the book, and I do speaking, but it comes down to this. I don't want to just make money and retire. I want to make a difference and inspire. That's my purpose statement. So I look at this as inspiring individuals, teams, and organizations to find purpose in fulfilling their true growth potential. And in doing so, pay it backwards to help others along their growth journey. Now, why do I say pay it backwards? Most of you have heard of pay it forward, right? Well, when I go to Starbucks, I'm a huge Starbucks junkie, I pay for the car behind me. In that moment, blessing someone with a cup of coffee or two is not a bad thing, right? And I find that it often creates a chain reaction or a virtuous cycle. Well, I have to pay it backward because I can't pay it forward. The car in front of me is already gone. So my goal is to leverage my experiences, my talents or skills or contacts or whatever I can do to inspire people to want to make a difference, and then do so likewise to help other people. And when did this all come about? Was I always this way? Well, I think I was to a point, but my epiphany came to me when I saw a leaf. And you may be saying, well, that doesn't sound very profound. There's a ton of leaves everywhere. What are you talking about? Well, this little leaf was on the end of a branch of a fig tree in our backyard in Valencia, California, where I lived. And some of you Californians can, although probably not this year, given the wet winter and cold winter you've had, can resonate with the fact that this was late February, and that's about the start of when certain signs of spring emerge. I just had a significant life event where I was unceremoniously let go from a $500 million casual dining restaurant concept. And I won't go through all the details, but suffice to say, sometimes life sucks. And I was kind of licking my wounds and feeling sorry for myself. Well, on the next morning, I went outside, took the dog out, and as God is my witness, I saw this little sprig of a green leaf just starting to shoot up. And in that moment, I got this epiphany that leaf is a symbol of growth and rebirth. And those of us who weren't asleep in science class in high school will know that all growth happens through the leaf of a plant or a tree. It goes from its bud in the spring to transforming into a full leaf in summer, and then bears fruit. In this case, this tree is a fig tree, so it bears fig fruit. That fig fruit is not only good for sustenance for animals and humans, but also as you look inside, it has seeds that stimulate further growth. And then those leaves then go into the earth to provide sustenance or fertilizer for that barren tree to start over. And that process is revolutionary over and over again. And that fig tree only knows how to be a fig tree. It can't be an oak. It can't be a maple. It is designed to be the best fig tree it can be. We're going to talk a little bit about the environment that will allow that to happen. So then I got to thinking, as I put the dog inside, I kind of wrote a treatment on my computer about a leaf being a symbol of growth and rebirth. And I got to thinking about this notion of what I had been leading with was the rule of threes. I don't know if you heard about it, but there's actually was in a Dodge Ram truck commercial last year, so it's still a thing, I guess. But the thought was, if you prioritize three things and do three things really well, you'll be able to accomplish your objective and have better focus. But I started thinking about the higher power of fours. I had been leading in that organization with these mantra of three key priorities: leadership, engagement, accountability. And I said, hey, if we do these three things, we're gonna turn our sales around. We're gonna put a new concept in the ground. We're gonna earn the capital and the right to grow. And we did, until we did it too good, apparently, and they decided to sell us. And the new company came in and said, we'll take it from here. So that got me thinking that rule of threes may be bunk. I was leading with this notion of leadership, engagement, and accountability, but I thought what was missing was an F for fulfillment. And that LEAF is not just a symbol or metaphor for growth, but actually an acronym, which stands for leadership, engagement, accountability, and fulfillment. And there are higher power fours that, if you think about it, we've got 4 directions, not 3. We've got 4 seasons, not 3. There are 4 chambers to the human heart, not 3. There are 4 elements to an atom, the source of life, not 3. And you kind of get where I'm going. So this is the model I came up with, is this 4-circle Venn diagram that every one of those elements revolves around purposeful growth. And I thought, well, leadership represents the seeds and the roots. Again, that fig tree has fig seeds that only allows it to grow into a fig tree. And the roots are so important for any plant for stability and nourishment, right? Same thing in any company. You got to have strong leadership or the company will wither and die, just like a plant will wither and die. So the importance behind leadership, or the end result, is alignment. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Now, if you just have strong leadership, you got a stump. The engagement represents the trunk, the branches, the system of nourishment. And in Spanish, I learned that's called savia, which translates to lifeblood. Well, what's the lifeblood of any organization? It's people, right? So to be able to get not only yourself and your teams fully engaged, it leads to empowerment. And we know that empowered teams have a deeper sense of fulfillment, they have a deeper sense of engagement and ownership in the outcome. So that's great. We've got our seeds and roots, our trunk and branches, but then let's talk about accountability, which is the leaves and the fruit. That fig tree is designed to make fig leaves and fig fruit, right? Well, within an organization, what outcomes matter most to us? And we'll talk a little bit about that. And how do we achieve our goals? So achievement is the kind of offshoot of accountability. And then finally, fulfillment represents the care and feeding, or the ecosystem for that tree to grow up into its full potential and to allow the magic of photosynthesis to occur. Could that tree grow anywhere? Maybe for a while, and maybe not as tall and as fruitful and sturdy and strong as it would if it were in a nurturing environment that was perfectly suited for growth to be fulfilled. And so that's where that last piece comes in, is environment. We're going to take a look at each of those in a minute, but I finished this epiphany with this idea of growing from leader to legacy builder. Everybody wants to be a better leader. Who doesn't, right? If you think about it, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And if you Google the word leader and leadership, you'll get over, I think, 1.7 billion hits. That's with a B. And you think about, everything from webinars to seminars to conferences, blogs, e-newsletters, podcasts. There's all these ways today to learn how to be a better leader. But not enough people are talking about how to create a legacy, a living legacy. We're not talking about bequeathing something after you're gone, you're dead and buried, but how do you live each day? And we're going to finish with that, on how you can leave a living legacy. So the 4 different ways to grow from leader to legacy builder, the book outlines them in 4 sections. First is cultivating your field for purposeful growth. You first have to understand what growth does, how it matters, where it matters, and how purpose on top of growth is the best kind of growth. And then planting your seeds for purposeful self. We have to work on ourselves. We have to do the inner work. Because if we don't do the inner work and work on being a better leader for ourselves, how are we going to lead others? And so that section is all about purposeful self. And then we'll spend the most of the time tonight talking about growing you forward for purposeful work, which is where that leaf model comes in. And then finally, as I mentioned, we'll talk about scattering your seeds for purposeful life, how you can pay it backwards, how you can create a living legacy and help others along their growth journey. So let's take a step back and talk about the purposeful leadership revolution, the L in the leaf model. Again, the seeds and the roots, all trying to get everything aligned. There are 4 key subcomponents of leadership that I've found are critically important, and they just all happen to start with C. There's clarity, from purpose to priorities. I heard Philip talk about clarity of your target audience, clarity of your business model, clarity of your purpose, though, that lead to priorities. And if you're not clear on what you stand for, you're going to be like the tree that doesn't have deep roots, right? And then connection is really where the magic occurs, is connecting those purposeful elements and priorities to now our plans, how we make money, right? And that's really important, so that if we create this clarity around what we stand for, but all we do is put it as a poster on the wall and salute when we walk by, but we don't really activate it. We haven't connected it to the plans on how we do business. We're just missing the boat. They become a bunch of empty platitudes. Well, now when we've done that, we've got to communicate it. And I say from the plans to the people, from the boardroom to the break room, or in whatever size organization you're in, to everybody within your ecosystem. Everybody has to understand what you stand for so they can know how to support it, how they can engage with it. And then finally, getting the commitment from the people to perform what they're designated to do, whether they're in your organization, like I mentioned, or they're stakeholders outside of your organization. We need to get them to perform. So those 4 C's represent the ability for growth alignment, all revolving around purposeful leadership. Now, most people think of a brand as one thing. Well, I believe there are 4 dimensions to a brand. If you think about it, there are your team members, your customers or clients, your business partners, and your communities or the world at large. Those are 4 important stakeholders that everyone needs to be aligned. And that's the job of any leader, is to align all of your stakeholders around your purposeful growth aspirations, your plans, your communications, and your commitments. So we'll talk a little bit about what does that mean. This idea of 4D brand alignment is absolutely vital to growth, and a brand's purpose is going to have 4 key components. We've heard about vision, right? It needs to be aspirational and needs to be aligned with your long-term plans, right? And a vision is some point in the future that you aspire to. The second is inspirational, that is aligned with your daily mission. How do you get there? How do you stack up enough days to achieve your vision at some point? And then it needs to be institutional, aligned with your shared values. How are you going to work together to achieve your daily mission that ultimately gets to your long-term vision? And then finally, it needs to be operational or operationalized, aligned with your strategic and tactical plans. As I mentioned, if you don't connect that portion of that dimension of your brand, you're going to be missing the boat. Now, why is alignment important? I was at the Olympics in 1996 in Atlanta. We were staying on a houseboat in Lake Lanier, and it just happened to be where the Olympic team or the Olympic rowing events were taking place. And so it was free, so we went to watch, and I was just marveling at these hulking athletes that were getting in these small, thin sculls, as they're called, and they're rowing incredibly fast through the channel. And so Patrick Lencioni said, and he's an author and business influencer and leader, said, if you could get all the people in your organization rowing in the same direction, you could dominate any industry in any market against any competition at any time. So I then learned from a rowing buddy of mine that when all oars are in the water rowing together in synchronicity, it's called swing. And that's when that boat moves swiftly through the channel with the least amount of resistance. It's not the biggest and strongest that win, it's the ones who can align with the cadence of the coxswain and have all of their oars in the water rowing together. So alignment's very important. Well, let's now look at a couple of case studies as to who's doing it well. How many are you a fan of Patagonia? There's a lot of different brands out there that sell, outdoor wear and equipment, but Patagonia really taken on a much bigger responsibility. So we hear this term corporate social responsibility, where they're walking the talk. Their mission is, we're in business to save our home planet. Now that sounds lofty. I thought I just wanted to sell jackets and outerwear and all sorts of outdoor equipment. Well, no, they believe in a bigger, noble purpose. And they put their money where their mouth is. They donate 1% of their sales to help grassroots organizations on a global basis. They've created these sub-initiatives called ActionWorks that connect individuals to those grassroots organizations, both within their company, within the community. They have their provisions initiative that supports sustainable food growing and supply chain techniques that are environmentally safe. And I love this. Their Worn Wear initiative helps repair damaged products and accepts trade-ins. Look at the ad on the bottom. It says, "Don't buy this jacket." I love that. And so this is a company that walks the talk. And oh, by the way, the founder owner there at the bottom is just announced last fall that his family is putting together a trust of all of their assets to basically go towards programs that help achieve their lofty objective of helping to save our home planet. Their goal is not to take anything out of the earth that they can't put in. That's pretty cool. Now, Canva. How many of you have used Canva? I can't survive without Canva, right? I think many of us who are maybe artistically inclined feel the same way. They've only been around 10 years. They're based in Sydney, Australia, and they've come up with this idea of empowering the world to design. And they have a two-step process: build one of the world's most valuable companies and do the most good we can do. And look at their values: be a force for good, empower others, pursue excellence, be a good human, make complex things simple, and I love this, set crazy big goals and make them happen. They've pledged 30% of their value to doing good. That's pretty cool. Now, the Cheesecake Factory, near and dear to my heart, because I served as Senior VP and Chief Marketing Officer. And the mission is, to this day, to create an environment where ultimate guest satisfaction is our highest priority. They're all about hospitality and guest satisfaction. And look at the four stakeholders, their team members. They've been voted Best Places to Work Award winner in the top 100 for, I want to say, 8 or 9 years straight. This is a menu of over 300 menu items. This is not an easy thing. Anyone who's ever worked in the Cheesecake Factory, you know, just to qualify, you have to score 95% on your final test just to hit the floor. And they turn a lot of people away because they're not going to lower their standards. And they want to make sure that their guests have this immersive, over-the-top dining experience. And the business partners are consistently profitable, but they also believe in giving back to those in need. And I was fortunate to be on the ground floor of this partnership with Feeding America. And we did this drive-out hunger tour. You can kind of see this old bread wagon that was reconstituted and built out for our drive-out hunger tour, where we went from September 1 through 30, which is Hunger Action Month, and we went to different restaurants from LA, our headquarters, to Washington, DC, our nation's capital. And we raised awareness, fun, and food for those in need along our way. And there on the bottom, you can see me if you squint, the guy on the far left, in front of a can sculpture that has 30,000 cans of soup that was wrapped and put up as relation to the red velvet cake cheesecake you see on the far left. How many of you ever had the red velvet cake cheesecake at the Cheesecake Factory? It's awesome. And I'm telling you, it came about because of this special partnership where we donate 25 cents a slice to Feeding America. And we've been doing it for years ever since. So this idea of looking after your team members first, your guests, your business partners, and your communities is really this kind of success formula that you'll see throughout. Best Buy, man, they were left for dead based on Amazon, based on Apple and some of the other big players. They really have a great story. And if you want to read another good book, in addition to mine, you can see at the bottom right, The Heart of Business by Hubert Joly is amazing. And it has almost the exact same key tenets that I have. And here's a leader who instituted those within Best Buy and said, hey, instead of us selling a lot of electronics, we want to enrich our customers' lives through technology. Doesn't that sound a lot better? Doesn't that sound more noble? And they said, this program we're going to turn around with is called Building the New Blue. They started with their team members, who they call blue shirts. And then they really kind of broke up the business into 6 different kind of need states that their customers have: entertainment, productivity, communication, food, security, and health and wellness, and said, how do we provide the right products and services to improve our customers' lives in those areas through the use of technology. That's still what we stand for. What a difference it's made in the turnaround of their organization. And their stock is trading a heck of a lot higher than it was several years ago. Who's heard of ServiceNow? They're really big in the business service space. And I checked them out because I was really inspired when I heard about them. Their purpose and their EVP and ESG. EVP is employer value proposition. I don't want to throw too many acronyms. ESG, environmental science and governance. They have a whole program around this. And their thesis is, their mission is, we make the world work better for everyone. And their thesis is, we believe a more sustainable, equitable, and ethical world is possible, and we can all contribute. 3 key things when you work there: live your best life. They start with that. They start with you. Do your best work, and then fulfill our purpose together. I thought that was pretty inspirational, and I really love that. KPMG is one of the big 4 accounting consulting firms, and they created something they called their Higher Purpose Initiative. And they did it in a really cool way. Instead of a bunch of executives going offsite and coming back and having the tablets that they come, from on high and say, this is what we're going to do, this is our purpose, this is what, they actually bubbled it up from their associates. And they asked a simple question: what do you do at KPMG? And they asked them to put videos together. And what they got back was something that was incredibly moving. It was shared throughout the organization. And so you can start to see some of the ads below. We restore vitality. I revitalize villages. We keep families covered. I power innovation. We launch space programs. And so all of their values, integrity, excellence, courage, together, and for better, now are aligned behind their positioning of inspiring confidence and empowering change. So did it work? Well, I don't know. Let's see what they said. They asked their team members, I call them that, not employees, but that's what they say. And they asked a bunch of these questions, and the percent who agree were listed in blue as those who work for a manager that communicates their purpose, and the gray is those who do not. So if you look at all of them, I feel the work I do makes an impact, not just a job. That's 80%. I'm inspired and encouraged to strive for continuous improvement and take my performance to the next level. Well, that's over 90%. KPMG is a great place to work, even higher. I am proud to work for KPMG, around the same, over 90. I rarely think about looking for a new job. Now, that's a little lower, but you know what? Many people have different reasons for looking for new jobs that are going beyond the way they feel about their company, right? We've all been there. I've been there. So look, it works. Now, I ask you this question as a seed for growth. Who is brand you? We all have a purposeful growth brand, or a purpose and personal brand. Everyone has one, but how often do we look at packages on the shelf at a grocery store, but we don't look in the mirror and reflect on what is our personal brand? So these are 4 questions that come loosely out of the 4 Ps of marketing, or the marketing mix as it's been referred to. Problem: what problem do you uniquely solve? Your packaging: how do you look, right, and speak? How do you show up? And then your performance, all about commitments. I've said for years, to me, a brand is nothing more than a promise, or a series of promises that are related. And how do you live up to your promises? You know how it feels like when you have a brand that lets you down. It breaks your trust. And we know that trust is often the biggest barrier to building lasting, loving relationships, right? When trust is broken, it's tough to get it back. And then promotion: how do you stand out from others? And I'm sure as you're getting your ideas pulled together, you're going to get into a marketing plan and a communication plan that gets after all that. But really think about, what problem do you uniquely solve? People want solutions to problems. And then how you look, write, and speak is how you communicate and you perform when you are hired or they buy your product or service. You live up to your commitments, you build trust, and you do that. Oftentimes you stand out from others and you get reviews, which is now the new dipstick into how anyone would buy a product or service these days, right? So those are some questions I want you to ponder. Words matter. If you think about words saying, it makes it clear. lead to intentions that lead to an actionable plan. Plans influence desired actions and behaviors that leave people with feelings of trust and relationship. So a couple words that matter to me, I want you to think about: from employee to team member. Employee is someone who just gets paid to do a job. Team member is someone who plays a valuable role. So a team member is being made to feel valuable versus just an employee. From a boss to a leader, I've never let someone call me a boss. I say, you can call me your leader, but then I've got to live up to that. It's more than just someone with a superior title. It's someone whose actions are worth following. And we know that service and humility are the best kind of components to leadership. We've heard of the term servant leader, right? And those are the best type of leaders I've ever followed. From shareholders to stakeholders. As shareholders, someone only invests for financial gain, but a stakeholder, someone who invests for the greater good. This idea that communities matter, not just about profits. It's purpose and profit, not just profit. And stakeholder means ownership. And so moving from like-minded to like-hearted, if you think about someone who's like-minded, they just think like others. Someone who's like-hearted is someone who builds trust with others. And again, we know that trust is the bridge to a lasting, loving relationship. And any brand is a relationship. And then finally, from culture to community. Culture feels like something we may be part of, but a community feels like a family one can belong in. And community equals belonging. And why is that important? We heard a lot about DEI. Well, I think you got to have the B. Diversity just gets us in the door. Inclusion invites us to sit at the table. Equity gives us an equal voice, and all that's great. But if we don't have a sense of belonging that allows us to feel safe, we probably aren't going to be vulnerable enough to give of our very best. In fact, we may die without the B. Someone may just be happy to be in the room where it happens, to quote Hamilton, right? We need to give them that environment, that nurturing environment, so they can give their very best. I love this poem from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So with the last bit here, I talked about this idea of creating a living legacy, scattering your seeds for others to grow. How do you invest your time, your talents, your treasures, and your triumphs and travails, or your experiences, to help others along their growth journey? How do you create a living legacy that you can build upon and grow every single day? So I end by saying, let's get growing. We have time. I'm happy to take any questions and hopefully provide some insights or answers. And here's where you can find me after this this call, my website, markamears.com. And then if you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect. But love to turn it back to you, Philip, and see if we have any questions.
Well, first off, thank you, Mark. This is wonderful. I really enjoyed this presentation. So I really, I think for us as entrepreneurs, as we're getting started, we really do need to begin with the end in mind and begin with a purpose. And I think that so many of us get it wrong in the sense of thinking about how much money we can make and how many customers we can get, and we forget that people actually do buy that purpose behind there, and you've articulated that very well. So thank you for helping us and enlightening us with that.
My pleasure.